on behalf of our Health, Wellness, and Work-Life Solutions Department, our Office of Diversity and Inclusion, Black Employees, Connecting ERG, Employee Resource Group, I welcome you to our annual Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. celebration. Thank you all for coming today. I am Sheila Harris, your MC for today, a manager of information and technology, a member of our Diversity Council, and vice chair for our Black Employees Connecting ERG. I am honored to be able to stand here today and to MC this wonderful occasion. Thank you to those on the MLK team who nominated me. And with some hesitancy and nervousness, I said yes. At this time, I also want to thank our organization, Bay State Health, for valuing an event that honors Dr. Martin Luther King and everything that he stands for. And as the program goes forth today, you will hear more about that. To the Food and Nutrition Services staff for preparing the lunch that you are now enjoying, and to our audiovisual setup team, who was in the back waiting for our call if anything goes wrong, and nothing ever does, because they are so fantastic. And we thank our teams here. To the employee performers and leaders, we have some performers today that are just absolutely awesome. It just showcases the talent that we have here at Bay State. We thank our leaders for being a part of this very special event. Now on your tables, there's some housekeeping items that I just need to take care of. On your tables, there are event programs and there are evaluations. Please complete the evaluation at the end of the event and leave that on your table, and I'll do a reminder of that before we close out today. At this time, I would like to introduce Reverend Uta Schmidt, Manager of Spiritual Services, for our opening prayer.
Good afternoon. Let's be together in a spirit of community and listen to the bell as we always do when we gather here at Bay State. Celebrating the legacy of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. means to honor his teachings and actions, as they are recorded in history books, and more so in the lived memory and in the lives of many of us, and in his sermons and books. If there's one book that has inspired me in my work as a chaplain and educator, it is the book Strength to Love. I believe it is because this book best explains the central elements of the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr.'s philosophy of nonviolence. His belief in a divine, loving presence that binds all life. He wrote in the sermon, "The Man Who Was a Fool," all persons are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. I can never be what I ought to be until you are what you ought to be. And you can never be what you ought to be until I am what I ought to be. In his 1967 address to the anti-war group Clergy and Laity Concerned, Martin Luther King said, "When I speak of love, I'm not speaking of some sentimental response. I am speaking of that force which all of the great religions have seen as the supreme unifying principle of life. Love is somehow the key that unlocks the door which leads to ultimate reality. The Hindu, Muslim, Christian, Jewish, Buddhist belief about ultimate reality is beautifully summed up in the first epistle of the Gospel of John in the Christian Bible, the New Testament. Let us love one another, for love is God, and everyone that loves is born of God and knows God. In the many, many different expressions that there are. So go forth with this blessing. May the loving kindness and care of the God of so many understandings, so many images, be with you today. To strengthen your aspirations to work for justice and peace, to celebrate the diversity of all people. May you be blessed with the courage and patience to follow the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr.'s charge to practice love in action. To transcend difference and to honor our common mutual humanity. May you be blessed with a sense of gratitude and appreciation for each other, for friends, for food, and for this community. So go forth, enjoy each other, enjoy this presentation, and feel blessed by food and friends. Shalom. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend Schmidt. At this time, I'd like to introduce one of Bay State's own employees, Lynette Johnson. Lynette Johnson is a training specialist in the Access Services. Lynette wrote a poem for today's event in honor of Dr. Martin Luther King. At this time, Lynette Johnson.
Good afternoon. This poem is entitled Dream World. Can everyone hear me? Okay. I had a dream that I wrote a poem that took flight. It escaped my pen, tumbled out of my mouth, leapt into ears, and clung to the innermost parts of every listener. The words were carried back to their homes, transformed into dialogue, captured in plans, and awoken in action. The poem made Dr. King let out a shout from heaven, wishing he had been able to come up with something so clever and memorable. It made people feel good, but not so good that they think everything is good enough just the way it is, but strong good, fearless good, righteous good. It lifted and held firm at the same time. It traveled time. Enslaved mothers whispered stanzas to babies in the hope that it would be trapped in their memory, so when they were sold away from each other, they could remain connected by more than a shared grave misfortune. Harriet Tubman etched it into her pistol and recited it whenever anyone had second thoughts. Freedom riders wrapped it round their shoulders. It was the padding that allowed them to take the beatings that allowed me, this brown girl from this America, to be able to sit anywhere and vote and work and have the life of my choosing without fear of the terrorists they faced every day. I woke up with a pen in my hand. I needed this poem. I wanted to write a poem that would be a solve for the millions that would never live to see what overcome looks like. A poem that promises it won't always be this way, a poem that holds on, a poem that prays, a poem that marks time and does not age. A poem that points the forsaken in the direction of a God who so loved the world. A poem that repairs tattered hearts and warms cold ones. I wanted to write some medicine. I wanted it to be easy to take, but I wanted it to bite a little. I wanted the hateful to hear it and be doused with shame and an overwhelming desire to do better and be better. I wanted this poem to be a symbol of my gratitude, a salute of respect for the soldiers of love enlisted and drafted, a song of acknowledgement for the work that has been done and the work that has not been completed. We are still under construction, evolving to fit the changes and challenges that new eras bring. We are going to need more than pretty words to put it all together. More workers, more believers, and more dreamers. Thank you.
A powerful poem, a powerful writer. Now, how many have read the fine print at the bottom of your program that says program subject to change? That's my way of saying oops. At this time, I would like to introduce and bring forth Nancy Schindel-Follick, who is Senior Vice President, Chief Operating Officer, and Chief Nursing Officer of Bay State Medical Center.
Good afternoon, and welcome to a celebration of the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. Dr. King is an example of servant leadership. A servant leader is one who offers an inclusive vision, listens carefully to others, persuades through reason, and heals divisions while building community. During his lifetime, Dr. King has demonstrated the extraordinary power of servant leadership to profoundly transform a nation. He did so specifically through his commitment to his community and the needs of the community at large. Dr. King continued to demonstrate his servant leadership through his personal sacrifice, his definition of equality and the pursuit of that equality, not only for Blacks or African Americans, but for everyone. In a short while, you will hear from our keynote speaker, Victor Woolridge, Chair of the Bay State Health Board of Trustees, who will share his experiences as a servant leader and his focus on the well-being of people and the communities. As I stand before you today, I am reminded of my first nursing job in New Jersey. It was a staff nurse at Newark Beth Israel Medical Center, a 673-bed facility located in Newark, New Jersey. It was founded in 1901 by 5 wives of Jewish physicians. Much of its legacy was built on their commitment for inclusion, for they were the first hospital in New Jersey to embrace African American physicians on their staff. The mission to serve all in need by a diverse group of healthcare providers created a deep commitment to that community. And when many other hospitals chose in the 1950s and 60s to leave Newark, Newark Beth Israel remained and is strong there today. And I valued the many talented servant leaders who devoted their careers to the underserved, and I am proud to have worked there and been mentored there for 22 years. This day brings so many people from different cultural and religious backgrounds together in such a vibrant spirit of unity. Whether you are African American, Hispanic, or Native American, whether you are Caucasian, Asian, gay, or lesbian, you are part of the great dream of Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. that he had for America. I would like to thank Bay State Healthy, the Office of Diversity and Inclusion, the B Connecting Employee Resource Group for helping coordinate this wonderful program today. On behalf of Bay State Health's Board of Trustees, the President's Cabinet, all of the leadership, and Mark Tulaski, the President and CEO for Bay State Health, as well as Mark Kerouac, the President and CEO for Bay State Medical Center, thank you for being here today and sharing this day with us.
Thank you for that welcome and introduction. At this time, we're going to ask everyone to please stand as the Black National Anthem is sung by Charles Redd. Thank you.
You're singing it with me. Charles. Switch. Switch. Well, they can hear my baby. Don't worry. Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring. Sing with the
Let us march on till victory is won.
Thank you, Charles. At this time, I'm going to let you know of a program change. This is not a news. At this time, we have on our program Mr. Mark Toloski, who is President and CEO of Bay State Health. He is going to introduce our keynote speaker for this afternoon. Following Mr. Toloski, Jacinia Rivera Caraballo will come forth, and she will sing for us "A Change is Gonna Come." And then following Jacinia, we are going to have Mr. Woolridge come forth at his request.
Leave it to Victor to get church in there. You know? So good afternoon, everyone. It's really great to see all of you. I need to, some of the program change is my fault. I need to apologize in advance. I may have to leave even before Victor is finished. We have a special visitor here at Bay State today. One of our two national senators, Senator Elizabeth Warren, is visiting us here at Bay State right as we speak. It's her first visit to Bay State, and Dr. Kerouac and Dennis Chalk and Steve Bradley are touring her, and then we're going to have a discussion. But as a courtesy and a protocol, and thank you for understanding, Victor, I've got to go see our senator in a few moments. So, but it's a delight for me to be here, and it's a distinct professional honor and a personal pleasure for me to introduce our keynote speaker for today, Victor Woolridge. Born right here in Springfield and raised by a single mom, Mr. Woolridge is the Vice President of Cornerstone Real Estate Advisors. This is a subsidiary of MassMutual Financial Services. Victor is based in their Hartford offices, lives here in Springfield. In that very complicated world, Victor is responsible for acquiring and financing real estate investment portfolios all over the United States and beyond. And Victor, I think that sounds a lot harder a job than running a $2 billion healthcare system. Victor holds a Bachelor of Arts degree in Legal Studies from the University of Massachusetts at Amherst. He holds the Certified Commercial Investment Member, CCIM designation. Victor has been appointed to the University of Massachusetts statewide Board of Trustees, where he has served as Vice Chairman of the Audit Committee and a member of the Committee on Academic and Student Affairs, and now chairs their Committee for Administration and Finance. Victor is very active in his church and gives back to his community through volunteer work with the Springfield Chamber of Commerce, the Dunbar Community Center, Springfield Technical Community College, and many others. He was the recipient of the 2012 Springfield Leadership Institute Community Service Award. Closer to home, Mr. Woolridge has a long-standing connection to us here at Bay State. As a youngster, he spent a lot of time at the former Springfield Hospital when he contracted rheumatic fever when he was in second grade. And he has children and grandchildren that were born here at Bay State Medical Center. Today, Mr. Woolridge is our leader, serving as the chair of the Board of Trustees of Bay State Health, now serving his second year as chair. In essence, all of us here work for the community. We're a community-based organization, and our community is represented by our Board of Trustees that Victor chairs. And he does that with insight and diplomacy and strength and humility. And he can throw some good solid humor in there when that's appropriate too. He's got a great sense of humor. Over the past 18 months, Victor led the board in a very robust process, resulting in the decision by our board to appoint my colleague, Dr. Mark Kerouac, as my successor as CEO this coming July. The board chair and the CEO must have a balanced and trusting relationship, and I have been most fortunate to have Victor Woolridge as my boss and partner. And Victor, I thank you for that. I'll close with something Victor recently shared with me, the values that he holds most dear. love of God, love of family, love of country, and a commitment to excellence every day. Victor, thank you for all you do.
At this time, we're going to ask Yesenia to come forth with her song.
Ooh, hello. Okay. I gotta cue my own music. Oh, never mind. There's an old friend that I once heard say something that touched my heart, and it began this way. I was born by the river in a little tent, and just like the river, I've been running ever since. He said it's been a long time coming, but I know my change has got to come. Oh yeah. He said it's been too hard living, but I'm afraid to die. I might not be if I knew I was up there beyond the sky. It's been a long time coming, but I know my change has got to come. Oh yeah. I went to my brother
Dr. King wouldn't get up unless somebody led him with a song. So, thank you. There were, first of all, I want to thank you all for inviting me here today. It's my pleasure to be here, and Dr. King in particular is someone that I have a lot of love and respect for, and so it's really quite an honor and pleasure for me to be here and speak with you and talk a little bit about servant leadership. So you asked me essentially 4 questions. And so what I'm going to do is try to just go through those 4 questions with my responses. I wrote a couple of things down last night just because I was running out of time during the day, and so I hope my thoughts here will at least be responsive to what you've asked. The first question was, what roles, personal or professional, have you embraced that have demonstrated your experience as a servant leader? And I would say, well, that would be every role that I've been in. And Mark talked about those leadership roles in the church, the chair of the Chamber of Commerce of Springfield, Dunbar Community Center Behavioral Health Network. I was a board chair there as well. My current role with the Administration and Finance Committee of the University of Massachusetts System, and of course here at Bay State Health, being the board chair. As a leader or servant leader, you really have to know whom you serve. That's an important part. Is it yourself or is it something bigger than yourself? We are nothing more than faithful stewards of a legacy that has been handed to us for safekeeping and improvement. That's what I think we are. Therefore, we must bury or sacrifice self for the greater good of that which we've committed ourselves to. Too often, I think people are of the belief that if you give up or give in to something, that you're a loser of some type. But in point of fact, you've gained more than you've lost. Would it be fair to say that Dr. King and his followers gained or lost by not fighting back against those dogs that were biting them? Did they gain or lose when the fire hoses were turned on them and they were washed down the street? And did they gain or lose when they were hit by the nightsticks of Bull Connor and his officers? Generations of people have been kept in their place by determined men seeking to preserve what they thought was their way of life. So why would a weary nation of oppressed people be equally determined to sing songs of freedom while being beaten and arrested so that future generations of people like ourselves could sit in this room together? They sacrificed for the greater good. They sacrificed for the mission. So how much more would it cost us to listen to or acknowledge those who work right beside us, day in and day out? Those who may want to and certainly try to advance the same mission that we have here at Bay State Health. But they may have differences of opinions or different backgrounds. How much more would it cost us? Sometimes just listening is what makes all the difference, and all that it takes is to listen to someone. Dr. King wrote in one of his speeches that we are challenged to rise above the narrow confines of our individualistic concerns to the broader concerns of all humanity. And he later says in that speech that whatever your life's work is, do it well. As one college president, he cited in that sermon, he says, a man should do his job so well that the living, the dead, and the unborn could do no better. And then Dr. King says, if it falls your lot to be a street sweeper, sweep streets like Michelangelo painted, like Shakespeare wrote poetry, like Beethoven composed music. Sweep streets so well that all of the host of heaven and earth will have to pause and say, here lived a great street sweeper, who swept his job well. I hope that certainly in my service to Bay State and all the other organizations that I've been involved with, that I've swept the streets to the best of my ability. And that's what I think a servant leader should do. Your second question was, were those experiences enriched by any intentional or non-intentional use of community or professional networks? If so, how has the power of creating or participating in those networks contributed to you becoming or fostering you as a servant leader? Well, I believe that all, or as many of our actions as possible, should be intentional. We should do our best to try and control what happens to us and around us by staying engaged in the activity that's right within our midst. We can't control everything, and we all know that. But I'm not the type of person who's going to allow the winds of change to kind of toss me to and fro. I like to try and control my destiny as best as I can and as much as I can, so that I'm not blaming others for how things turned out later in my life. We should take control of ourselves. I'm personally not that fond also of the word networking because it seems so premeditated and intentional. I'm going to network with people for some type of personal gain. I'm also really not that good at it. So I really prefer to build relationships and really let my work try to speak for me. Let the work that we do speak for us. If others are not pleased with what I've done, then I think the community or the organization that I'm associated with will somehow tell me that they're not pleased with what I've done. And then it's up to me to recognize those shortcomings in myself and about what I'm doing, and then to correct it. We must, of course, take responsibility for ourselves and for the duties that we have before us. It's because of my relationship building, which is really built on the foundation of respect for the other person's space, their opinions, their needs, their talents, and all those kinds of things that we have to be respectful for. And it's because of that that I believe that I've excelled while leaving some room for others to do the same. If we squeeze out all of the opportunity for our neighbor, for our coworker, for whomever to succeed, and then we're really not being a servant of any type. I don't believe, of course, that any of us has all of the answers, so being a good listener really helps, especially to the quiet, unassuming person in the room, which allows for a lot of good things to happen. And if nothing really does come out of that conversation, then you really haven't lost anything. That's number one. But what you have done is you've gained something. You've gained a new relationship with someone that you didn't have before. So, try speaking to the dishwasher. Try speaking to the person who comes into your office and picks up the trash. You know, sometimes they are intimidated by this hierarchy, separation. But if you actually take the time to acknowledge them, to greet them on an equal level, and ask their opinion, you'd be surprised at the things that you learn. The ability to move mountains starts at the bottom. So although it was already a part of my communication style while I was at the Chamber of Commerce, I really understood the power of asking questions. Members of the chamber, as they come into that role, had no reason to follow me, and I understood that. Why would they follow me? And some of the members were already ready to quit and sort of move it aside because they weren't getting what they wanted out of that relationship with the chamber. And so I asked a number of questions. I visited with the members of the chamber, particularly those who were disgruntled, and didn't really offer them any opinions about it. But when they asked, why should I do it? My only answer was, things are going to be different. We are actually going to take action. And that turned out to be the difference. Lots of studies, lots of work being done, all of them put on a shelf, and no execution associated with those reports. We're going to take action. And that's what we have to have within ourselves. the desire, the drive to move things from one place to the next. In my view, there isn't that much power in a network of people or things if we can't figure out how to move it. One question that starts the process of movement is a simple one. What do you want me to do? What can I do for you? Sometimes people say that. For instance, recently I lost my mother, and people would say, is there anything I can do for you? Most people did not do anything, but a limited few did. And that's the difference between making a difference in somebody else's life, moving things along by saying, what can I do for you? How can I help you? And then doing it. So when you clean up your own yard, you'll notice that others will start to clean up theirs as well. Say that again. Mountains are not moved by edict or from the top down. They're often moved by the bottom up grassroots commitment to change. The civil rights movement was led by women and children, and when the men of the movement, clergy and laborers and proponents who'd grown weary of the notion of nonviolence, Dr. King reminded them of the purpose of the movement was jobs, it was equal rights and fair wages, and that this mission could not be displaced with headlines confirming the violent expectations of a fearful nation. Do not engage in violence because that's all they'll talk about. Keep your eyes focused on the mission. The question was then asked, well, how long shall we put up with the dogs? How long shall we be beaten and hit with water hoses? And the simple answer was given, not long. How long before these things that we're concerned about are taken care of and fixed? Not long, he replied. We can't grow weary in the good works that we do. We simply cannot get tired of it. I hope that you'll work to build strong relationships at every level of this organization so that we can achieve our mission. Some may say that we've got some difficult days ahead. And then they might ask the question, how long? And I can tell you, not long. Your next question, does your current role as the chair of the BH board embrace the role of servant leader? And if so, how? The answer is absolutely. And the how is simply this. Being the board chair is an honor, of course, certainly to me, and a great privilege that carries with it a lot of responsibility. We here at Bay State are a vital part of this community that our friends and our family members and our neighbors are all counting on during the most vulnerable periods of their lives. People pray for good news from us, and it's not always good news. And when it's bad news, they pray even harder for compassionate and high-quality care. The decisions that the board makes are focused on delivering on this promise of providing the highest quality of care to everyone that enters into our doors. These are our guests who have difficulties. The board chair's responsibility is to facilitate and guide the board in advancing the mission of Bay State Health. I am not here to advance my own mission, to advance my own opinions or purposes that I might have, but to seek the collective advice and counsel of all board members and to guide the board through a series of discussions and decisions that will ultimately lead to policies and directives that will guide the CEO and the executive leaders of Bay State towards accomplishing its mission. The board chair sets the tone and pulse of the board's engagement as responsible to the board and our community for the faithful execution of the hospital's mission. The CEO serves at the pleasure of the board, And the board must always understand, especially the board chair, that he or she serves at the pleasure of these constituents. If a board chair forgets his servant role, then there will very likely be a discordant atmosphere at board meetings that will undermine the success of the chair and ultimately undermine the success of the organization. The board chair can't see him or herself as the boss of the CEO. As Mark said, we must be partners, co-laborers, and stewards, if you will, in the vineyard of healthcare delivery to this community. We must work together. And finally, you asked, what thoughts, tools, or strategies can your audience embrace in order to be a servant leader in any role they absorb? Well, it's simply all about the work. If you're a football fan, you hear this all the time from coaches and talking heads. They'll say, just do your job. That's what the football folks say. Just do your job. And if you do your job and everybody else does their job, then it will all come together and work really well. So I ask you to embrace the challenges of the work. Embrace it. And pass on your excitement of the task that you have right in front of you. In order to do your job, you must dedicate yourselves to learning everything about your job. In Dr. King's letter from a Birmingham jail, which happens to be one of my favorites, he writes to his detractors that shallow understanding from people of goodwill is more frustrating than absolute misunderstanding from people of ill will. Lukewarm acceptance is much more bewildering than outright rejection. Excel in your understanding of the task that's in front of you. Just be the best street sweeper that ever lived, and know that what you do matters. Know that people see what you do and take account of it. You're a part of a magnificent, finely tuned engine that's totally dependent on each person doing their very best to deliver the highest quality of care to our patients. If you greet people, be the best greeter, like James is. If you're the cook, then cook like you're cooking for the person you love the most. If you're a caregiver, then care for the patients like you like that person to care for the one that you love the most, even if that person is yourself. And don't worry about others that might be growing up faster around you. You know, sometimes we get a little possessed with how somebody else is moving along a little faster. Don't be worried about that. As Dr. King said, if you can't be a pine on the top of the hill, be a scrub in the valley. But be the best little scrub by the side of the hill. Be a bush if you can't be a tree. Very few people, I think, feel like they get paid enough, hello, or get recognition enough, double hello, for what they do, and they dwell on those things that ultimately sap the joy out of the work that we all do. Again, Dr. King says nobody is unhappy when they are praised, even if they know they don't deserve it. And even if they don't believe it, they're not unhappy. The only unhappy person about praise is when that praise is going too much towards somebody else. We have to be happy for the somebody else's. Some people spend an inordinate amount of time and energy entertaining negative feelings about what could have been or what we think others should have done, without realizing that no matter how bad we think our problems are, that there's somebody else that has it worse off than us. Our complaints seemingly fall on deaf ears, and we miss out on the blessings we have right in front of us. There was a song that we sing in church that goes, I had some good days, I've had some hills to climb. I had some weary days and some sleepless nights. But when I look around and I think things over, all of my good days outweigh my bad days. I won't complain. What this song tells me is that when we look over the history of our experiences, we cherish the good days along with the bad days because we recognize that if we didn't have the bad days, we would not have appreciated the good days as much as we did. So don't complain about the bad days. Embrace them as the precursor of good days to come. Keep a song in your heart and a promising and hopeful attitude about what will be. Then work hard at making those things better right here in your sphere of influence at Bay State. And I promise you that everything will be better than the day before. It's only when we stop and entertain the negative that causes our passions for work that we do to wane. When we waste time thinking and dwelling on those things. So I want to encourage you to not grow weary in doing the good work that you do for Bay State Health as good and faithful servants to our community. Thank you.
We thank Mr. Woolridge. He brought with him, and he's leaving with us, some words of wisdom, servant leaders, and I truly appreciate that. At one point there, as he was speaking, I was waiting to hear a Hammond organ tune up in the back. I thought he was getting ready to preach for us. We thank you once again. We thank you for accepting our invitation to be here today. We thank you for coming, and we truly thank you for your words. At this time, moving forward, we are going to hear from Charles Redd, who is a registered nurse here at Bay State. He is the assistant manager of Western 4. He's been before us once today, and he's coming with a bridge over troubled waters.
Hang on a second. Hang on before you start that. I just wanted to just really share something quick with you. I was about Thanksgiving, and I was my mother was there. I was complaining about work. And probably the greatest serving leader that I know is my mother. Everybody hears me talk about Phyllis all the time. So she stopped me, and she said to me, when you guys were growing up, I wondered, how was I going to raise 3 young black men in the inner city by myself and make sure you're successful? So she told me, she says, I went to my room, and I wrote down the 3 best qualities of each of my sons. And I spent my life cultivating those qualities. You didn't know I was doing it, but I was doing it. So she took this paper out, 40 years old, took this paper out, had my name on it. And she put, Charles will be the leader of men. And this isn't about me. What it's about is, as leaders, we have to look at our people, and we have to say, what's the greatest thing that they have to offer? We need to note that, and we need to try to cultivate that. That's what Mother taught me, and that's what I wanted to give to you before I started singing. Thank you.
When you're weary, feeling small, when tears are in your eyes, I will dry them all. I'm on your side. troubled water, I will lay me down. When you're down and out, when you're on the street, when evening falls so hard, I will comfort you. I'll take your part. Oh, when darkness comes and pain is all around, like a bridge over troubled water, I will lay me down, like a bridge over troubled water, I will lay me Sail on, silver girl, sail on by. Your time has come to shine. Oh, your dreams are on their way. See how they shine. Oh, when you need a friend, I'm sailing right behind, like the bridge over troubled waters. I will ease your mind, like a bridge over troubled waters. I will ease your
Now, as we prepare to bring this year's Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. celebration to a close, there are just a few more things that we would want to do. At this time, I am going to ask to come forward the MLK Jr. Planning Committee. If you would please join me here. Let's give them a hand.
Again, thank you so much for attending and joining us this afternoon. But before we go, Mr. Woolridge, we would like to present a small token of appreciation for your wise words that you shared with us this afternoon. We have a copy of The Struggle for Our Freedom book, but it has been memorialized by each one of our members for Mr. Woolridge. So thank you so much.
And we want to thank our planning committee for putting together this wonderful occasion for us today. Thank you. And now, I thank everyone for coming today. I hope that you've enjoyed yourself as much as I have. I've been thrilled to be standing here. All the nerves are over and they're gone now. I can go have something to eat. We hope that you've enjoyed the food. We've enjoyed having you here. We thank our photographer, Ed. Ed is all over. He's everywhere. If you want photos, he's there. And he does such a fantastic job, and we thank you for being with us today. We thank all of our leaders who were with us today, and we thank Mr. Woolridge once again for accepting our invitation.